Hi, Antoinette. It's so nice to have you here. I'm excited for this conversation because of your experience, which is something that we're going to delve into it now. But before we do that, I'd love for you to do a little bit of introduction of who you are, how you got into HR, and then we take it from there.
Thank you very much, Rose. It's lovely to be here with you today. Um, yes, my journey was kind of funny. I started in accounting, moved to tech, and then moved into sales. And I did my PhD in leadership, business leadership, and I done a big piece of work in process strategy and people capability. I then started a consulting firm focusing on business leadership and org design and org structure. And that's how I landed with a company called Blue Label Telecoms, and that's where my HR career started. I think it was a good fit of business experience bringing that into HR, but also for me, taking all the business experience and add the empathy to it, because lots of times in business we make changes and we forget the impact of the people, and sometimes it's not the people on top. Those people are resilient and they can handle it, but the people at the bottom, that change might be massive for them. So today I'm happy for that experience and adding that to my portfolio in my consulting firm today.
Mm. Yeah, I hear what you're saying because it happens often. People end up in HR coming from different backgrounds, and as you said, you had the background of accounts. You mentioned the sales, and you did your PhD. And usually, when you're in kind of a leadership executive teams, people is your biggest asset. So the conversation will turn to people, and then, as you said, there's the factor of the who handles people dynamics, empathy being involved in that, or just knowing how to handle people dynamics. So then you fall into like taking care or having the overarching responsibility for that. And I can understand how you found your work impactful on that specific area. um, and then one question related to what you just said about the work that you do, organizational design and working the org chart, roles and responsibilities, cascading it down so that everybody understands how they get involved, in the business, and probably change management as well, because I guess, some of that. So what exactly is the work, that you do on that front?
So I believe strongly that every business has a strategy, and sometimes they have long term strategies, and some businesses have shorter strategies. But a strategy cannot be executed without the people. And it doesn't only involve the people, the strategy must be executed within a process. So I believe the process is the most important. And in the process is where you really define what is the type of capabilities that we're going to need for this process to be streamlined. And that is the part that I then do to say, how do we organize the organization in the right way to streamline and optimize the process? So, how can we most be most productive? And I think that's where the structure comes from. And change management to me really starts at the bottom. It's not I don't like all the change management processes that's available. I do use a little bit of each one of them. I haven't got one methodology that I follow, but I believe it's the connection to the people at the lowest level where the change is going to impact. I say if you picture a story of all little cocks, there's little cocks, the row above is a little bit higher, the row above is a little bit higher. If I make a change on a really big cock in the system, it's a small turn. But as I make the small turn on top, it's a lot of little turns at the bottom. And those are the people that's affected. So getting them involved and the methodology of hear them and then activate is very important. And not hearing to then tell them your story, honestly listening to them and taking their input and then planning what the change management and the process will look like.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, and I have also a similar approach when it comes to putting into place a process that you can have a beautifully designed process, but the implementation of it's key for its success, right? So it really is about that talking to people, and as you said, getting their buying into the process for them then to be able to execute aligned to this bigger vision that you're kind of like aiming for with this strategy. And I do wonder, because you work with corporates, how do you get that done? Because you have volumes of people. So do you speak to everybody? Do you have like a team that you know what they have to say and a structured way to go about it? How do you get that buy-in?
So I do speak to people, but I do also have a team. But for me, most important is when you consult, it's you in and you're there for a period and then you're going to move out. So it is important to get the buy-in of who's going to own the process first. So I identify the process owners within the business, and I work with the process owners and I guide them how to do the conversation, how to get the people on board. One thing important in process is also the handover points, because if that's not clear, that's chaos. I often talk about the riverbanks, and we have to put the riverbanks in place, because imagine a river without banks. That's chaos. So that's the handover point. So important for me is how I work. I have process owners within the business that I work with, and I work very closely with them as if they're part of my team. Also, because I want to walk away and make sure that I've made a big impact in the business. I don't want them calling me back on the same stuff. I want them to call me back on new things.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Something that I also do in my interventions is that, particularly with those interventions, that we have a cadence, right? So we are, meeting and discussing things. The moment I hear repetition, like we have already discussed this, then I know something is not right. Be it what we propose or how people took to it, something is not right. Because if we're repeating the conversation, it means that we haven't moved forward. So I understand what you're saying. If you're called in to say, then something didn't stick. But
Yeah.
having said that, what I would love to know is, so you have this team, and probably internal team that you work closely with to make sure things are happening. How do you then report on success? Like, what are those key things? That is that something that you
I've lost you there for a while. Are you back, Rose?
Hello.
Hello, I can hear you again.
I'm so sorry about that. We were saying about editing. This will definitely have to be edited.
We have to be resilient.
Yes. But I'm glad that we could stay on and it didn't just kind of erase the whole thing. I'm sorry, it seems like I have low shedding and I wasn't prepared. I didn't have my backup on. Let me quickly change into my strong network and we continue.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
So
great.
what I did hear your full question,
Mm,
and then you dropped off before I could answer. So how do I measure? So I can't be optimizing process within other businesses if I don't follow a process myself. So I
mm,
have a strict process in deliverables. So I sign off the deliverables in before I start the project. So when I propose, when I do the discussions, I have that, and I've got a good cadence process. So each one that I use internally, I also have the same thing. So here's our deliverables, here's our timeline, and we work together. And that's the measurables. And then what's important for me is that I also make sure that I celebrate when we hit that success. So when we hit the milestone, we celebrate it.
mm.
But yeah, so I work strictly on deliverables and I make sure that we celebrate when we hit those deliverables.
I'm curious to hear how you celebrate.
Sometimes lunch with wine.
Nice. It makes so much sense what you're saying because I also find it that sometimes you reach that deliverable and it took so much hard work to get there that you almost like it doesn't necessarily feel like success, although it is success, but it just took so much of you that you're probably drained or and then you just go on into the next thing. And it is important because I do think that with the celebration part, it's that moment of reflection, right? To say, this is exactly what we wanted and we got there.
And what you just said is you were on the go and working almost with no break. So the celebration to me is the break. It is sometimes lunch. So I made a joke about it, but it is just taking them out. Let's lunch. Let's not talk work. Let's just do lunch, or just giving them an afternoon off to say.
Mm,
So I also discuss that with the managers or the CEO before I start the project to say, in between, are you okay that we do this? Because it's important for them to have a break, to go and spend time on what they want to spend time. Because sometimes a project can be very taxing on you mentally, physically, and work life.
mm.
Um, that sometimes suffers when you deep into a project.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned to me with your latest company, it was a 5-year project.
Yes. So it
So
was it was 5 year where I permanently worked for them. But yeah, it was almost a 5 year project.
is it okay to disclose a little bit what the project scope, just to understand why that duration?
Yeah, so it wasn't specifically just a project. How it started was I was working for them as a consultant in one of their businesses. They've got 16 different subsidiaries, and I was in a team of defining the strategy for the one subsidiary. And the strategy then moved into a full org design and a focus on customer centricity, where I consulted and opened a call center for them. There was then a lot of work in the other 16 subsidiaries, lots of the work, the foundation of HR. How do we do performance management? So it was a array of stuff that they needed. And they said, let's not have this consulting relationship, work for us and help us put that in place. So that's why it was 5 years. Um, because it wasn't just a project. There was just a lot of stuff that we needed to put in place, foundational and then innovative. And then when COVID happened, the role of HR and how HR needed to operate as an advisor and a strategic partner with a business has changed completely. And for me, I was happy that I was in that position, taking that role and helping the business get through firstly COVID, and then how do you reset after COVID? So it was an exciting journey for me, and I think COVID helped it to be the 5 years because it reshifted. We had to reimagine and change the way HR operated. We couldn't just be, we hear when you have issues. No, we hear before the issues come, and how do we help you to anticipate and help you to lead before the change comes.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I think that with the consultancy work, what's important there is that you you come into it with your whole array of experiences. So your background in accounts and also sales, all of that, adds in, because you work very closely with the executive team. So you need to be at that level of in order to implement what the vision of what they want. So HR plays a role, but there's also all that cumulative experience that you have to make, I guess, to make the project successful.
Yeah, today it's very important that HR has got business understanding or business acumen. It's not only a HR role and understanding people. Yes, we get people in motion, but we can't get them in motion if we don't fully understand the business.
Yeah, I agree with you. Some of our interventions are exactly that, where HR meets with every person in the business. Like, you have a cadence, right, for performance management, but there's this time where we discuss business, the business case, and that is so important because we want everybody to have that knowledge. And that, we always say we set the transparency levels. Can we disclose numbers? Can we agree with the executive team? But it's so important everybody in the organization understands the business case and feels part of it. And that to me is a strategic HR, which is different from your execution. When you have a role description, you're a recruiter, and then you can have more of like things that you can tick off lists. But there's another part of HR, your HR business partner, that there is about the business acumen, as you said, that needs to be in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rose, what's interesting is the new generation. So the new generation of employees, which is the bigger part of our employee team today, is looking for a different experience. So they're not looking for the job description and my performance management objectives. They want to know the objectives that they are making an impact in the business. They don't want to just have a set of tasks and tick the tasks. They want to know what's the impact they can make, and they want to feel that they're adding value. So it's very important that HR understands that, because objectives aren't tasks anymore. Objectives are definitely the impact that can be made in the business. So yes, I have my job description, but outside of that, what impact am I going to make this year to achieve the strategic intent of the business? And the new generation's definitely looking for that. They're not looking to come tick a box. They want to make an impact. They want to be valued, and they want to know that the business is valuing them as well.
Yeah, exactly. Their involvement in that bigger picture. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. What I've seen as of late is that the agility that's required to make sure that people are aligned, it's a faster pace as well. And what I mean by this is that people are constantly thinking, is this making sense? Am I, is this, for me? Am I aligned with this? And otherwise they would go, into something else. And there's a little bit more of agility. Also the speed at which projects are scoped for, and how business will pivot from doing one thing to the other. So it is quite for HR, I believe, to put all those pieces together to be like, we have the motivation from the person, we have the business case, we have the speed that it's required to make it. All of that needs to be like aligned so that it works, and that changes at a fast pace. So it's interesting, how the HR, to the point where the turn that I've seen is that instead of having permanent employment and having, like this is your job description and you're permanent employed. It's more like, okay, we pull you in here for this project, and then let's get a contractor here to do this. And it's all kind of like happening, right, in a much faster pace. And it's interesting how labor laws don't necessarily maybe keep up with that, you still, or like terminations, even recruitment processes. We were just saying, that's not fast enough as for the work environment that we're living now in. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. So I'll first answer the first one. Today, the workplace needs a skill set. And to deliver a project in the agile way and in the pace that business wants today, you actually need a blended skill. Exactly what you said. I pull this person in, I get a contractor in. So there's a blended skill set within that room that can then think faster, think differently. Is this making sense? Should we change course immediately? Which is so far apart from I have a job description and I need to fulfill that job description. And then in how we present back onto to the government portals are specifically in job descriptions or job families. So it's so disconnected today, which is scary. And so there is organizations that's moving away from roles and responsibility, but from to a skills company. So organization that hires for skills. But it becomes difficult on how do we report back. There's certain standards that we have to report, and that makes it difficult. So there's definitely alignment that needs to happen between where the world's going and how we report in legislation. On recruitment, I almost I'm like a rebel in the recruitment space, because I say skills can be taught. Firstly, employ for attitude. You know what the culture of the business is. You know the type of people that you're going to need. Look for that first, then add the skill set, and last think about the job description. Because in my experience, every single job I've been in my entire career has never stayed the same. So when I start, that's the job description. 6 months from then and a year from there, the job description is completely different. I'm doing different things. And I'm saying me, but that was just my experience. You can ask anyone, that happens. So lastly, recruit for job descriptions. First for the attitude, secondly for the skills, and then thirdly for the job description.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The one thing, if I look at the future of work, right, thinking with this more fast pace, is that where's that does the loyalty lie? And I just go back to like your needs as a human being. If everything is more fast paced, you want to work from your own location, you want to handle your own time. There's a clash with the standard way of looking at employment as we have had it up to now. COVID disrupted that a little bit, but then should employers expect that loyalty in terms of how you invest yourself, or is it more like disattached and the loyalty is actually within how you want to build your life as long as you deliver on what's required? I think there's something around how we operate in human nature. As you said, recruitment, for example, we recruit for personality, for attitude, and that kind of go-getter. But at the same time, if things are a little bit more fluent, do we, is that kind of disrupting that kind of building relationships and trust component to make it more transactional? Is that more efficient, perhaps? What's your take on that?
Yeah, so to me, loyalty is something of the past. And I'm not saying don't employ people that's loyal. In the past, loyalty was I'm going to stay for 10 years or I'm going to stay for 20 years. That should not be the leadership mindset. The leadership mindset is when I bring the person in, let me create an environment that makes him loyal for the time that I'm here. Let me give him the development, let me give him the environment where he or she can thrive. And when they do, they become an ambassador for me outside. That makes me a company where people want to work. So I become a preferred organization where employees are knocking on my door to work for me. So I don't keep loyalty as please be loyal and stay. No, let me develop you. Let me give you the environment where you can thrive. And when you leave, go talk about us. Go tell the world what a wonderful company it is. Then we would get the right talent and the skill set that we need in future. So loyalty to me is not the 10 years. Loyalty is loyal and absolutely focus while you're at the place. But we must be happy that they go. There's also sometimes we can't give them the skills that they are aspiring for. So let them go out, go work in another company, get that skills. And we shouldn't be against it to take people back because they come back with a different skill set, with knowledge that they got from somewhere else. And that's something that definitely needs to shift. And you asked, is loyalty with my home or is loyalty with work? I think work-life balance has taken a complete shift. People are looking to live. There is a different need that all employees have today. They have a need to have life, and of course we have to work because that's where the finances comes from. But employees have to be adaptable to understand that. So measure output and not the input. There's some moms that can never go to a child's soccer game because soccer aren't only on weekends anymore. Soccer games are on Thursdays. Employees should be adaptable to say, today you can go. These are the outputs. As long as you get to the output at the time of delivery, I'm okay how you do it and where you do it from.
Yeah, I love that mindset, and you just really spoke to me because even though I kind of set my own time, I have to be at a client tomorrow, and it's there's something at school going on, and I just felt it inside, like I have to say no, but it is really the old one because I do handle my own time, but I can only feel for parents that are in that position where they have to, and not only parents, like anybody that you have something that feels it's priority and you have to say no because you have something else to do. Well, you could very much rearrange it, as you said, to meet the outcome, but you are the one that's handling your own time. Yeah, I think that I do think there's still a lot of work to be done in that front for more businesses to adopt that mindset. And there is that that works that needs to be done from HR with the workforce, but also with executive teams that if they want to take their business forward in terms of staying relevant and attractive, these are the things that they need to have in place, right?
And it's important that the experience that the employee have is met because that makes them more productive. If I'm happy, I'm motivated, and I want to give back. And there will never be, there's a problem. Oh, it's not in my job description. There's a problem. I love this business. They look after me. I want to fix the problem. But you're right. It's still a journey. There's a lot of businesses that still need to make that mindset change. And it's not easy. Remember, all our experiences in life has craft our mindset and how our brain was wired. So we really have to completely unwire it to rewire how we think. And that's not a process that takes a year or two. It is a journey.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
journey should start.
Yeah, very true. I also wanted to ask you, what's your involvement with like adoption of new technologies? Because as a consultant as well, you are looking at the business case, you're putting projects into place. Then do you take a look at what is that architecture of technology the company uses in order to create efficiencies? Do you suggest new technologies to be added to their suite? How do you go about that digital transformation for businesses?
So, Rose, I do look at the current processes and how technology is working with the process. And if there is ways to optimal it, I don't suggest. I bring in a partner. So I haven't got the experience on all the technology that's out there. So I would bring in a partner to help to suggest. And I've got two very big partners, and their business is doing exactly that. So yes, I definitely do look. I believe that automation is the way to go. I've seen it work in businesses. Automation is definitely giving you that leading edge. In my own business, I have got apps that I've developed. There's a learning app and there's a complete employee experience app that brings that digital experience back in, because we have to cater for all the generations in the workplace. And to be honest, the younger generation loves being behind a screen. So how do we engage with them in the way that they want to be engaged with? Through an app. They experience things through an app. And also it's easy to reach the masses through technology. So how do you do that? Technology. So definitely I'm a believer of technology and digital ways of doing things. I love dabbling around in it, but no, I haven't got the experience to tell them which ones are the best. I'll bring a partner in.
That's a very interesting approach. I mean, and also you learn while you do it. You stay updated because it's an area where you always need to, keep up with the latest. But I like what you said, that you have seen it firsthand, how the efficiencies that it can create. Because I think one can go, the other side where you just want to implement the technology, but kind of forgetting what's the bigger purpose just for using the technology. And it is always about assessing, how is this going to help? Is it really answering that need that we originally discussed?
Yeah, and it's always the challenge is it's expensive. So investing in technology to go digital is expensive. The change management process for people are taxing as well. It is exhausting to go through that. But I believe the ROI of what the technology will bring afterwards. I've seen it firsthand in the business that I worked with COVID. So we weren't very digital, and COVID forced us to be online immediately. We did it within 4 hours. We all went home and we were online in 4 hours. But it was difficult getting used to getting onto Teams and all of that. But coming back, the absolute win was the empowerment of innovation. The way people were talking, can't we automate this? Can't we do this digitally? Can't we do this differently? So just starting on that journey, there would be an innovative mindset in the business that is going to drive productivity and efficiency and ultimately cash flow. So you're right, it is challenging because it's expensive and you have to invest in it. But if you start with the ROI in mind, the win is there.
Yeah, 100%. And as you said, looking into the newer generations, there's almost like that is how they prefer to engage. We have these tool pals, and it is very much geared towards the newer generation because it's on WhatsApp. And the way people engage with the tool and disclose, we have a series of questions. It's absolutely phenomenal, and we get to know things that we would not even think about knowing about the staff complement, just because we have this little window to their life, to the life work balance, or how things are going for them. And it makes HR be much more strategic and also much more accurate in the way we need to implement policy, in the way we need to look into people's sentiment, energy levels, and things like that. So you're almost missing out on a lot of data that will drive your business and business case, because at the end of the day, it is your people telling you how they're feeling, right?
Yeah, and it's actually funny because you think that if you engage on one-on-one and you build a strong relationship, that you would be able to gain that information. But I had a similar experience in the business where we had a very sensitive um, subject that we were discussing in harassment and that, and people that have been struggling with it for a few months, even a year, then came forward because they felt safer to do it digitally than doing it face to face.
Yeah, that is so. Yeah, I also had a person disclosing suicidal thoughts, and then I always say, if I come to them face to face on a weekly basis, how are you feeling? they're not going to disclose those things. But what technology does in this case is that it's almost like a mirror, because it's not another person, it's you with yourself in a platform, in a space, reflecting on things. So the level of disclosure is much higher. What's interesting about that as well is that people do not shy away from giving feedback. With the right platform, the right context, people do it. And that is so valuable. It also speaks about the organization, in terms of how open they feel to do that. Because again, it would be a different story if people wouldn't disclose, because again, those things are still playing out, but you're not being aware of. So massive difference to the business, how technology can help with understanding where everybody's at.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you draw a comparison between the different corporates and the different work that you had to do? Because you've done it for a few businesses. So does your consultancy approach changes according to a company? Do you work on, methodologies that you're able to apply? How is that for a consultant?
So there's definitely, in every business, has a strategy, and a strategy gets implemented through a business model. That stays the same, doesn't matter what organization it is. But the industries are different. And I worked with manufacturers, I worked with makers and movers, and then I worked with distribution companies. And there's a different culture in all of those. My approach is, I do have frameworks, I have methodologies, but my first thing is what I call a discovery session. So it's a free session. I don't charge for that. And I come and sit with you and understand your business completely. Firstly, understand, where do you want to get to? Where are we today? And what is the nuances in your business? Culture plays a big role. For us as consultants going in, we need to understand the culture. We also need to know if we can click into that culture. Is that value set and your value set the same value set? So in distribute or in selling, you connect directly with consumers. You need to market the product that the end consumer is going to use. In a distribution, a little different. It's a business to business. So you might not talk to the end consumer ever, but you need to be completely customer centric, because the customer that you're talking to is also a business. So yeah, very different. So although there's comparisons, they all have a strategy, they all have a business model. The business model changes. And then the biggest change is people. So the culture in the business and how the culture is driving the productivity. So to establish a new process, or just me working there, I need to understand the people culture and how they drive performance. I'm going to give you two examples of two businesses. The one business, high performance culture. So they were definitely, we're setting objectives and we are goal orientated and we drive the performance. And the management style in that company was leading but taking others with you. So the management style was definitely leading and teaching the others. The next one was a very entrepreneur business, and they were fast paced, and the culture there was innovative. So entrepreneur, innovative, let's do new, let's do different, which was different from the performance. It wasn't let's have strict objectives, let's just be goal orientated. It was no, there is goals, but we're going to go fast. If we need to reset, we reset fast. So in that, the culture was resilience and not so much performance. So even in the recruitment process, you will recruit very differently for the two different cultures. So if I do nuances, business is business, but culture and how the management style needs to be adaptive to the culture, very, very different in businesses.
Yeah, those are beautiful examples. And I can also see how that culture can change over time in the same business. There will be times it could start as a, kind of startup, and all, almost like young stage and recruiting for resilience, and then it's an established business, and now we have the structure and we need to make sure that, and it can change into something. So there's always in the kind of life of a business as well, you can draw comparisons to like a human life, right? What's infancy stage, teenage stage, and adult stage, right?
And, as people go through the teenage state, they rebel and all of that. I've seen that in businesses. I'm currently working with a small business that's been a startup for 2.5 years, unstructured, um, absolute nice vibe. The team works together, but they now need a little bit more adulthood. So they needed structure. They need some people coming in to manage the operations. And yeah, the change management is a tricky one because they're in the teenage stage. They want to rebel against it.
Yeah, I had even had a ratio, like dogs is like one human year, 7 years a dog. Sorry, a cat or a dog? Is it a
It's
cat?
dogs, yeah.
Dogs. Okay. I said companies is 5. So one human year, it's 5 on companies. I promise you, it works. You
I'm gonna,
should, yeah, you should
I'm
try.
gonna use that. Thank you for the advice.
um, Yeah, but if you think about it, companies are made out of people, and if you have a certain energy to start a business, that's an energy that's required, and then when you have to hit profitability, then that's a different energy that's required. So it will portray how the business does its work, right?
Yes, definitely,
Mm,
definitely. Culture plays a big role. That
mm,
story, strategy, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I believe in it 100%.
mm. Yeah. What do you look at when you choose to do consulting work for a business? Is it the industry? You mentioned a bit about that, but is it also values or the mission? What is that? How you work with clients or how you find clients?
So I don't look at the industry as such. Um, I believe different industries all have a little golden thread through them. What I do look at is if I really have the knowledge to impact the business in a big way. I don't want to consult and use what they tell me, turn it around, and implement it in their business. I want my knowledge and my experience to make the difference for them. So I definitely look at their future strategic objectives. Where do they want to go? What is it that they requiring to get to the future? And do I have the expertise to do it? So that would be my first one. I do look at their value set. So is their values aligned with me and their decision making process? Because that could be very difficult for a consultant if the decision making process is a stumbling block in what we want to implement. So that's the second thing. And then I look at, can I build a long-term relationship for success? Because I think that's the important one. If I can't build the relationship and it can't be a long, I build customers for life. So, and if I can't do that, that would make me rethink if I'm going to build that or not.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think with consultancy work, there is this idea of it could be business wise retainer work or like project based. But I like you are building clients for life, so they know that they can tap onto like working with you when it's necessary, because I find that that is the most sustainable way to go about it. I wouldn't like to, have a consultancy where you're just called in once and then, that's it. Like it's kind of a quick in and out, right? Like you do walk a journey with a client. And to me, it's the best way to create an impact, really.
Yeah, for me, if it's an in and out, it almost feels like a failure. They didn't like what you did, so they're not calling you back. So it's very important for me that I don't go in if I don't have the expertise. I will suggest other people. I've got a big network, so I would suggest other people that I know have the expertise. But if I've got the expertise, I want to make that impact, and it must be a lasting impact. And I
Hmm.
always want to be called back.
Mm.
Not for the same project, for a different one, for a new one.
And then what has been like the toughest type of project that you have to kind of work on?
Um, so I think it was one of the programs that I did was establishing a full sales program, ways of working plus training, and they had a specific ROI that said improve the sales. So if you enable and you put process in place and you put training in place and you build the capability, it's difficult to say, okay, I'm going to increase sales, because it's still the people needing to do the work and needing to increase the sales. So the specific piece of work that I did, it cost me jumping into trucks with people because the salespeople were van drivers. So I had to jump into trucks, I had to go into the informal market, understand where they're at, and build this program. And I physically did all the training as well. So it was almost a one-man show, although I had people working with me. And we increased sales by 26% in that year after we implemented. So tough project, but definitely a well-deserved reward at the end.
Mm. I think that's to show how much, when you're in the detail and, you work at a strategic level, kind of, looking at the project, liaising with the executive team. But actually, when you jump on the truck and you are there on the go while the operation happens, is where you need that in order to make results, right? If you stay at a strategic level, it is great. You're going to add value, but that 27% increase in sales is because you got there down with when things are happening and like analyzing that, looking ways for improvement.
Absolutely. And I believe strongly in that. If I want to make a change, I need to understand right from the bottom what it is that's happening. If we make change only on the top, we affect a small piece. If we make the change all the way to the bottom, it's a big change. And I also believe a lasting change, because it's those people that actually do the work, that actually is driving the change or embracing the change. So you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had um another challenge that I want to see if you have also been involved with things like this. It's almost the opposite. It's like when there is clashes in that executive team, and now there's the need for a mediation when it comes to big decisions, shareholding decisions, for this team. And I even got like to say, I need to dismiss the CEO. So, and I always say with HR, the way I see it is that you can do HR for the team, but when it comes to the CEO, they're almost like kind of exempt of the HR work, because how do you dismiss a CEO, right? So I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to deal with something like that?
Not exactly on a CEO level, but definitely executive level. And just what you said, it's almost the CEO is exempt. Sometimes the CEO is so married to the executive level that they're untouchable. So yes, I definitely had dealt with that, and I also had to put a recommendation in of who we should exit out of the business, which is not always a good thing. But what I believe is thoroughly doing the homework, because can people change? I fully believe people can change, but do they have the aptitude and the ability to do a mindset change? That's the difficult one. So if that can't happen, they are the stumbling block, and they would be the one that goes against the change. And your team's only as strong as your weakest link. So yeah, it wasn't an easy task. It wasn't a one conversation. It was a lot of data with a lot of facts to present. But no, I never had to. I never had to do it with a CEO. So I can imagine that was very challenging for you.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a question mark. How far can you go with your interventions? Because also, sometimes when it's not the CEO, but when it comes to having hard conversations, I I always ask them, look, what are we looking for here? Are we dismissing? Can we dismiss? Because having those hard conversations, well, it's going to have people, walking out the door. Are we prepared for that? So kind of managing that risk of like, how far do we want to go with this intervention? And when it comes to the executive team, it's so delicate because there's so much IP and so much responsibility that goes with this particular team, that you disgruntling them, because that's the thing. I mean, with HR, for you to see a success, it means that you're going to disgruntle people, because we're working with people dynamics, and that can be seen as, if you see it through fruition, it's positive, it's an outcome. But if you disgruntle people and then there's other dynamics at play, or there's power dynamics, ego dynamics, and then things, they can damage the business, right?
Yes.
So it's a very delicate type of intervention that one has to do. And I think it takes an HRBP with a lot of experience to handle those situations, and see the outcome that is expected of us.
Yeah, so I think there's two things that I would advise a HR person. The one is to absolutely make sure that you build the trust. If you've got the trust from your leadership team, they know that you're not going to come with the emotion. And then the second one is, don't try and recommend any of these things out of emotion. Calm down, relax, get your rational brain into action, and take facts and figures. People can't argue against the facts. Follow the right process. You can't argue against the facts. But also, sometimes in the consulting world, remember, we recommend. So sometimes we feel like failure if they don't want to take your recommendation. It's okay if they don't. You've done the right thing without an emotion, with your integrity in place, and you made the recommendation. It is ultimately the business that's going to make the decision at the end. So sometimes for consultants, don't feel that you have failed if that happens. It happened to me once, and 36 months later, 36 months, they called me back. And they said, know what you said? It's absolutely right. We've taken too long, but we want to implement what you recommended. So I said, I'm going to have to relook because the recommendation might be different. But yeah, so go with what you believe is the right thing and still recommend it, but don't go with emotions, because that's not how people make decisions.
Yeah, very true. There's also this thing like HR. We have that, the function of empathy and looking at the people dynamics, but we are also looking at the business case, and what's best for the business is also our what we, our mission, or how we do our work. So it's not unlike for us to, as you said, remove the emotion, look at the business case, and then people decisions are going to be made on those. And as you said, you stay true to what you're doing is what is required for the business from a very factual point of view. So that's kind of what you grab onto to be able to play that role.
Yeah. Well, I think HR is the voice in that, the voice for the business. So I believe you must be firm and fair. So there's stuff and there's a business need, but are you fair against the people? And I think we're the voice of reasoning within that. And we must bring both perspectives. Yes, it's right for the business. Now let's look at the people, because sometimes just getting rid of someone has a ripple effect to the rest of the business. The relationships that is built, the things that is done within the business, getting rid of him completely out of the business might have a big impact in the business. So we must make sure that we look at all the aspects. Sometimes it's just better to move them into something different, move them away from having people reporting to them to being a specialist in their own area. So there's many ways to do it. But if we're firm and we're fair to both the business and the people, that's the success.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We had the one case where it took us about a year to be able to make that decision. There were interventions happening because we had to create awareness, but it took us a year because there was a lot of IP, that we just needed to be careful with how the process was being done. So as you said, it's not something that decisions that take place from one day to the other. But what I do wanted to say is that I do believe that a good HRBP it's so valued in a business, especially for a CEO, because it's a massive emotional toll in having to be looking at how you manage, people in a business, and you can become that person that they bounce ideas with, and you're aligned in terms of what needs to happen with the business. So it's when you can play that role for a CEO, it's a really valuable asset for the business. So thanks so much for your time. I think that was great to really understand how consultancy works, and also how at that level of strategy, and with your way of consultancy that is not, like in and out, it's like how you walk a journey with businesses. I think it's also an interesting conversation for people that are maybe consulting, but need to take that next step in terms of becoming an HRBP, right? Helping
Yes.
at the executive level, because there's a lot to be said for having experience in HR to jump into that position. And I think you gave really good insight into how to become that person for businesses. So thank you so much for all your insights into that.
Thank you, Rose. It was a pleasure talking to you today, and just some of the stuff I've learned from you today. So thank you very much for also sharing with me.
Such a pleasure. I'm going to be adding your LinkedIn information here as well. If anybody feels like getting in touch to have, that discovery call and just look at how business is doing from a people point of view, I'm sure they're going to have a lovely conversation if they reach out to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.